So my message today is largely story. As you can see, it's called Saving the Children. Saving the Children. How many adults have I met through the years who, by the way, gave their heart to Jesus at Vacation Bible School? And here they are, in the church serving Jesus decades later. Very, very important ministry. Anyway, saving the children. A boy named Nicky was born in England in 1909. His parents were German Jewish people who had moved to England and at some point after that became Christian and raised Nicky Christian. Nicky's full name was Nicholas Winton. Nicholas Winton. His father was a successful banker. So the family, pictured here, Nicky on the left, which included Nicky's older sister and younger brother, they lived in a 20-room mansion. At Nicky's school, the students were encouraged, private school, were encouraged to follow their own interests. Nicky discovered he liked math, photography, stamp collecting, and something called fencing. Fencing, most of you know, is a sport that involves a type of a sword. And Nicky became so good in fencing that he became a member of the English national team and would have been in the Olympics, but the 1940 Olympic Games were canceled because of World War II. Well, at Nicky's school, they actually had a zoo, and the students took care of the animals there. Nicky's specialty was pigeons. He made cages in woodwork class, and he even took the birds out on walks. When Nicky grew up, he followed in his father's footsteps and trained to become a banker. He could speak German and French and, of course, English. His training in banking took him to many places, such as Germany and France, etc. In these places, he made friends and did things like attended clubs and going to concerts. He played tennis. He liked sailing. He liked to ski. In general, he was no different than the other wealthy kids of his time. But in addition to his social life, Nicky and his friends had serious talks about world events. They were concerned about things in Europe, especially Germany. There, people were being taught from a very young age to hate certain people, especially Jews. And the Nazi party, led by a very bad man named Adolf Hitler, was building an army. In December 1938, when Nicholas was 29, he planned to spend the Christmas holidays skiing in Switzerland. He looked forward to relaxing. But he received a phone call from a friend who was in a city called Prague, which was in a country called Czechoslovakia. His friend told him to forget about the ski trip. He urged him to come to Czechoslovakia, where, he said, there was something going on that was much more important than skiing. When Nicholas arrived in Prague, he saw that it truly was no time for skiing. He saw huge refugee camps that were full of people who had come from other parts of Czechoslovakia, German-speaking parts of Czechoslovakia, parts that had been taken over by Hitler through his armies. Before this, German Jews had been forced to flee from Germany to Czechoslovakia. They had no idea that the Nazi party would soon occupy Czechoslovakia as well. But that is exactly what happened. What really made an impression upon Nicholas was a huge number of children he saw among the many thousands of refugees. One day, Nicholas saw two kids on the street, a brother and sister about 7 years old. They did not know where their parents were. He took them to a shelter, but it was already full. The focus at that time was on the elderly. That evening, Nicholas made a decision to rescue children in need. There was no one else doing it. Mr. Winton, that's Nicholas, Mr. Winton gave up his skiing trip and ended up dedicating himself to saving children. This reminds us of Jesus. Speaking of himself, Jesus said, "The Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost." Because of his love for us, Jesus could not stay in heaven. He had to come to earth as one of us and do the things he needed to do to save us. Well, Mr. Winton started a program, as I said, to take children out of Czechoslovakia. He set up an office, so to speak, in his hotel room. Everyone understood that it was only a matter of a short time until the soldiers, the Nazi soldiers, took over the whole country. For the Jewish families, this was very bad news indeed. The situation had become so dangerous that parents were willing to give their children to total strangers in an effort to save their lives. They were willing to do this even though they rightly believed they would never see or hear from them again. Mr. Winton wrote lots of letters. He even wrote a letter to the President of the United States. But as it turned out, there was only one country willing to accept the children. That country was his own, England. They would be willing to accept the children if families could be found to take them in. Mr. Winton made lists of children there as he worked in his motel room. He took their photographs and listed their names. Within a few days, huge lines of hundreds of people stood outside his room. Mr. Winton received them at all hours of night and day. Because of this, the soldiers, the Nazis, began to spy on him. Mr. Winton had no choice but to give them money to keep them quiet. He needed to buy time. He went back home he sent back home to have his savings in London transferred to Prague for more payments. In this way, he was able to register about 900 children. About 900 children. Well, at that time, in one of the safer parts of Czechoslovakia, a small town near the big city of Prague, where Mr. Winton was, there was a girl named Vera. She was 10 years old at the time. She was a happy girl. She had cats, lots of cats. In fact, whenever there was a stray cat, she would adopt it. She loved to feed her parents horses. Her family was Jewish. One morning there was a new girl in Vera's class. Vera was surprised to see that she had no shoes on her feet. The girl said that when her family had to flee, they had no time to take anything. Well, when a break came in class, Vera ran across the road, got her very best shoes, and gave them to the girl. When she told her mother what happened, tears appeared on her mother's face. She hugged Vera and said, "You did the right thing, my little girl." when visiting Prague, Vera's mother heard about the work that Nicholas was doing for the children. She talked it over with Vera's father, and they decided that Vera should go to England. Can you imagine this conversation? Here are parents deep into the night. What should we do? They made the decision to send precious Vera, remember her name, Vera, to England. Well, in January, Mr. Winton went back to England where he began searching for foster families. He put advertisements in the paper. He made travel arrangements and applied for visas. He raised lots of money from donations because much money was needed. There were families willing to take in kids who didn't have enough money for the required deposit. Money was needed to keep German soldiers and officials from stopping the work. Money was needed for the transportation. Eventually, Mr. Winton organized 8 trains in which children were able to travel to safety. There was 2 trains that almost didn't make it. Nazi soldiers and officials who were not receiving bribes found out what was happening. Mr. Winton responded by giving away huge sums of money. The trains were able to leave the station safely. They went to Holland, and from Holland the refugee children rode in boats to England, where most of them met their foster parents. Each refugee child had their name sewed on their clothes. 669 children were saved. Vera, who loved cats and who gave her shoes to a refugee girl in her class, was on the 5th train. I mentioned these trains. There was actually, there were 8 trains, but one of them didn't make it. It's so sad that even while the children were already on the train, the Nazi soldiers attacked. At the same time the borders were closed. The children on that train were not saved. 2 years later was the so-called ultimate solution. But that is not the end of the story. It is quite amazing that Mr. Winton never told anybody about his work in saving 669 Jewish Czechoslovakian children. He never told his children or his grandchildren. He never even told his wife. Mr. Winton is pictured here with his daughter on the left, and his wife never told a soul. The story went unnoticed for half a century. Then in 1988, when Mr. Winton was 79 years old, by the way, he lived, I think, to be 106 or 107. When he was 79 years old, his wife made an amazing discovery in the attic of their home. She found lists of the children who were saved. The lists included their parents' names and the names and addresses of the families in England that took them in. Pictures of the children were right there in front of her. Well, she tried to give this information to a couple of magazines, but they, for whatever reason, had no interest, and she finally found a researcher, that is a historian, who was very interested indeed, and this got the ball rolling. Letters were sent to each of the addresses, and 80 of Mr. Winton's, quote, children were found in Britain. Of course, they were not children anymore. They had grown. They had families of their own. These people who were once Jewish Czechoslovakian children, who were in the gravest of danger, never even heard of Nicholas Winton. They never knew how or why they got to England. At this point, I just want to share a video in terms of bringing this story to its end.
Lady said to me, "What's your name?" So I said, Pinkasovich. When I saw this lady said to me, "What's your name?" So I said, Pinkasovich. When I saw my name and my brother's name printed in the biggest shock of my life. I couldn't speak, I couldn't breathe. I've had goosebumps all over my arms. All these years, 50 years,
nobody knew who masterminded our rescue. And then out of the blue, I was asked to take part in a television show, That's Life, where to my joy and, such fulfillment, I came to face to face with the man who saved my life.
They got me there in a way under false pretenses. Well, then I was sat in a seat which was focused on the camera, and I became part of this program. I didn't know I was going to meet for the first time the children that I'd brought over so many years before.
Managed to save 664 children. This is his scrapbook. There are all kinds of fascinating pictures in it. Perhaps you can see, this is a picture of Nicholas Winton himself with one of the children he rescued. If you look at the very back of this scrapbook, fascinating things in it, all the letters. But back here is the list of all the children. This is Vera Diamant, now Vera Gissing. We did find her name on his list. Vera Gissing is with us here tonight. Hello, Vera. And I should tell you that you are actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton. Hello.
Thank you. I wore this around my neck, and this is the actual pass that we were given to come to England. And I'm another of the children that you saved. Can
I ask, is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
As we think of this story, this history, this reality, first of all, I just want to mention, our families, our children. Again, just imagining those parents. This gentleman that you saw, I saw his full interview, and he said he He never could understand the strength that his parents had to...
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sorry. His parents told him that, they expected to see him in a few months, when they knew really that wasn't the case. And he said that he really never stopped waiting for them to come. But, and so, our families are very precious, whether a big family, a small family, spouse, children, very, very precious, parents. And we need to cherish those relations. That includes church family. You imagine this man who was, as he said, fooled into being there, and then there's all these people there. What a experience. It reminds me, in one of our books called Co-Porter Ministry, they used to have a picture, two pictures in the back. One was a picture of a young boy who had gone to the home, and there was a man, older man, out in the yard raking, and the boy was showing him a book. And no doubt the man bought the book and read the book, because the other picture showed the man greeting this boy in the Earth Made New, with, the artist put as much gratitude in the eyes as he possibly could. And this experience here is incredible as it is. What a thought that entering the kingdom of heaven, someone from Vacation Bible School, someone from some other contact that we may or may not have known of, literature that we left, or whatever it is, that we could see someone there in the kingdom of heaven by the grace of God who had used us to help them to make that decision. This is, Jesus left heaven to seek and save that which was lost. That's you and I. Lost. And everywhere around us, in our everyday lives, there are those who need to be sought and who need to be united with Jesus. The work which the church has failed to do in a time of peace and prosperity, she will have to do in a terrible crisis under the most discouraging, forbidding circumstances. So now we enjoy peace to a large degree, and what a privilege, what an honor, what an amazing thing it is that the Lord is counting on us, human beings, His church, to represent Him here in our community. And may God help us to just absorb and appreciate what was done for our redemption, and to appreciate that the Lord then, in the plan of redemption, is counting on us as a means of reaching others. What an amazing thing, what an amazing reality that we live in. And may the Lord help us to truly live in reality and to rejoice in reality. It's my prayer.